It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of Foul Play. That's Fantasy Overwatch League Play. I am your host, Deathblow, joined as always by the Blevins. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. You forgot what your name was, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I got distracted by something on my other screen. It was honestly
because
like
I certainly forgot my name.
It's we haven't podcasted in too long. I've forgotten my acronym. No, like it was in the Discord mode that switches cameras, and it's not usually there, and it messed me up. But all right, no A Smith this week, but regardless, it is time. Stage 3 is upon us and getting started this week. So
Finally.
yes, a super long break. It's been a while since we've been with you guys. We did the holiday last week, completely caught me off guard in my head. We were going to do a draft, and then everybody had holiday plans, so we just had to cancel. But speaking of drafts, we did do the 90s TV draft, I believe, the last time we were on the air. So an update there. A Smith did get his second draft victory in a row, but by the narrowest of margins. I want to say it was 2 votes. They don't tell you an exact vote count, but we don't have the largest response rate in the world, and I'm not the worst at math. So 2 or 3 votes was all that was there. Coming up in a distant third, yet again, was of course the Blevins. Just punts every time he gets it's just there's something like I feel your research is good.
No, my research for this one was bad.
You just choke in the moment on the spot. I mean, none of us took ER, and I think that means we were all wrong, but I at least shouted it out.
The problem with that one was that like there's a lot of good shows that like I could have made like just a bunch of appeals to popularity, but like I got nothing to talk. Like I pick ER because it's like one of the highest rated shows of all time. That's the end. Oh, ER's a bad show. Okay. That would have been my conversation.
You're picking. I mean, I was able to pull it off with Sopranos, so the excuses, I suppose.
Yeah,
but nonetheless,
for one of them,
we got to come up with a plan because A Smith can't go 3 in a row. I won't allow it. I don't even care which one of us wins. The other one needs to sabotage, and one person carries. We got to figure it out.
I think here's the thing. I don't want to give A Smith any credit. I want to take credit away from the voters.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I mean, you.
I'm pretty disappointed. Pretty disappointed in the
slack-jawed gawkers don't know good TV is all I have to say.
It was so funny because I like found myself in these arguments for like a week and a half about Friends versus Seinfeld, and I'm like, listen. These are both great shows, and that's what I said in the episode. I'm not here to try to talk bad about Friends. It was nowhere near Seinfeld for me personally. I go, but numbers are numbers, and Seinfeld crushed it in the numbers game, and people were like, "No,
unique.
No, it didn't." And I had to like pull up ratings, and like they were like it was like 20 million. It felt like I don't know. I don't remember the numbers, so I shouldn't quote them. But it was at least 7,000 million more viewers for the like finale of Seinfeld than it was.
Here's
Friends.
The problem, though, is like Friends is such a like vanilla like safe show that like no one's gonna be like no one's parents are probably gonna be like, oh well, my 6-year-old can't watch Friends, but we're like Seinfeld maybe. I mean, I was young when it was out and my parents let me watch it, and that's probably why I'm a degenerate today, but and The Simpsons too, so I was
gonna say you're not wrong. There certainly has to be a reason for that, but we're never gonna be able to find it on this show.
It's definitely The Simpsons.
We're never going to be able to find the exact reason on this show in particular. We'd need trained psychologists and things like that. But let's actually shift the conversation back over into the world of Overwatch League and fantasy sports a little bit. But you're not wrong, Blevins, because unfortunately we do not appear to have anything different about this stage going into it. We have not had an official announcement about what the patch will be.
Yeah, we don't even know.
which is absurd. But regardless, it shouldn't change much, even if we do get the new patch. I believe Jake said on a stream that it won't be, that it's going to be the literal exact same patch as Stage 2. So if for some reason he's incorrect or speaking out of turn or whatever, who knows, and the patch does go through and you want to speculate, we've had this conversation in the past, McCree is getting a significant buff. So you can go pick up any of the McCree specialists that are going to be on any of these teams. Diva will probably get a bit of a nerf. It's definitely a nerf, but we don't, like we said, we don't think she's going to be actually getting at this stage. And I also don't think it's going to be enough to actually push goats out of the meta. You might see some protect the McCree compositions, like you see some what's it called, bunker comps right now, but you know, otherwise it's still going to be mostly a goats world going into Stage 3. So we don't think there's a big need to really hit the waiver wire based off of a speculation in the meta. And we were really kind of holding out for that news before we did the episodes, because there'd have been like 2 episodes worth of content about
or
who
at
you
least
should pick up.
Some news.
Right, or if something happened. But some of the teams, Blevins, did try to save us a little bit.
Yes.
They went out and made some roster moves, so things are shaking up on the actual rosters themselves. There's 3 teams in particular that are going to be, we believe, significantly different. That's the Florida Mayhem, the Los Angeles Valiant, and the Toronto Defiant. Blevins, why don't you talk about this first team here? I know you're at least an apologist for them more often than not, so talk to us about what's going to be different for Florida.
Here's the thing. I think my final tie, well, I don't know. We'll see. The big thing here is that Fate has been added to the Florida Mayhem. Tavik has left or been cut from the Florida Mayhem, which is obviously a sad day for me, having been the de facto #1 Pluppy fan for many years now. It is sad to see him go, though at the very least, he's no longer playing for the Florida Mayhem, so that's a positive in my book. But with Fate here, he definitely... Fate was a top 3 tank in Season 1. I think in any given week, he was never really, he never really spiked a week and was, very clearly the #1. That usually went to someone else, Gesture or Fissure. But he was pretty much always #3 and sometimes #2. So even though this meta, we're not really seeing the main tank have that same sort of impact, like we did, at least points-wise necessarily, as we did in Season 1. He is definitely going to be strong here. He's no longer on the LA Valiant, the mysterious team who doesn't get a single win in the first stage, and somehow their players are still miraculously churning out points. He's no longer on that team. The Florida Mayhem do not have that, I guess, curse. They're just bad, and their players are not getting them teams. So if you have him, he's still going to be good. He's probably not going to be as good, but I don't think he's not going to be... He's going to make the team better, which maybe will bring him back up to parity, potentially. I don't know. You're not moving him if you have him. And, if you can pick him up at a cheaper rate, possibly, maybe wheel and deal for him, he's going to be a little bit lower than he was. But I feel like you're going to be hard-pressed to even be able to pick him up. But you might... if you're looking for a main tank, maybe you can wheel and deal for a slightly reduced rate. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, if you were using him before, just continue to use him. He's definitely, I think, worth the risk that comes with the move. There is risk with what's happening here. He's a lot is changing for him, but it's not like the LA Valiant. We're stacking wins, so you can't come and tell me that just because he's going to Florida, who loses a lot, means he's going to be doomed, since he was a valuable asset and a startable option for you in fantasy with the LA Valiant. So I think he's going to continue to to be that here with Florida. And honestly, I think he's got the potential to boost some of the people around him. I think, listen, I'm not the biggest Zephyr fan in the world. I think he gets more hate for what's going on in Florida than is really fair. But I have said many times, I think the options they've let go, other than they weren't Korean and they want a full Korean roster, I think they were better. But you're change that name that you're highlighting in the notes there. But so it's definitely a situation, like you said, just keep him. Honestly, I'm fine using him and starting him right away if you were in the past. So really kind of, as much as this is a big, huge shakeup for Fate personally, it's just not, for fantasy purposes, to me, a very big deal. So I think you can just continue to use him and treat him exactly as you have before. Anything, Dan?
I've almost kind of convinced myself of the opposite point I just made. What if maybe he's still, it is definitely speculative. What's that?
You think he's the linchpin, the thing they were missing? I think he's the right position for it. If that's what you're even getting at.
No. I think he's going to make the Mayhem better, but in terms of fantasy, it is somewhat of a risk. So maybe you could ship away Fate at current face value. Here's the thing. I don't think he's going to go up in fantasy value. I don't think he.
It would be very difficult, right? Because it is to me the most important position to make a team significantly better. I think if he's good enough to make the Florida Mayhem a mid-table team, then he could increase in value, certainly. But I do think, they do have other problems there. Obviously, Zephyr's been far from a consistent player for them, but I always thought their worst piece was the main tank position. So now they're upgrading that in a very big way. So we're going to kind of need to reevaluate this. I've been a supporter of Hagopun. I think he's gotten a lot of hate for what's going on over there. Listen, the viewership of Overwatch League is so new. All they see is a team winning and losing. And when they see a team winning, they're like, oh, they're so good. Every single one of them, all 6 of them, they're just the best. And then when they're losing, it's all 6 of them played like garbage. And it's just, and we're all guilty of it at times. And it's really difficult as an untrained spectator to try to train yourself to see inside what's going on. And because of that, even trained eyes just get it wrong. And if there's a position that disappears, or, how they're playing is as hard as possible to discern and to judge, I think it would probably be the off-tank position. So, I think there's a lot going on here. Suddenly I look at the Florida Mayhem roster and I think they don't have that one big exclamation point, right? Where like, you have to fix this. This whole position is broken. There's some gaps in the hero pool, things like that. But all you're basically doing them is bringing them to like a roster that I think is similar to like Houston's. And obviously Houston isn't performing very well. So it doesn't have to mean they get wins. But I do think it upgraded the roster significantly. There's a chance for upside, but I'm not betting on it. And I don't think there's any reason to, because even the upside potential is limited, right? He's not suddenly going to become a top 5 tank player. It's just not something a main tank can do. It's just not in the cards.
Not suddenly, but maybe in a, if we do get a different meta, if Overwatch League really does push us out of goats and more like something in season 1, maybe we do see him back at the top 3. So I flip-flopped about 5 times. I think the moral of the story is, if you have Fate, just sit on him, and if you can pick him up, I probably would. But
I think that's fair. If you got somebody in your league that owns him and is nervous about it and doesn't, really hates Florida, then I think that's a conversation worth having for sure. Moving on, let's talk about the LA Valiant here. They're adding Shax, Fact Fiction, and McGravy. To me, Shax is a speculative ad. I think he's great and very likely to impact and get some stage time for this roster once there is DPS involved in the in the metagame. I don't know what's going to happen with it in the GOATS meta right now, but we will see. The season's over for them, so there's a lot of incentive for them to at least try it. They put KSF in a couple times last season after they got him. Now he plays all the time. But if I had to guess, I'd say KSF and Shax are going to be on the stage almost the entire time here for the Valiant the rest of the way. I think Fact Fiction is the new starter here. Kooky is an option as well, but I think Fact is overall a better player. I expect him to get the start. I'm willing to pick him up as a prospect for my tank line. I'm not willing to play him at all right now. His play time might develop over time, things like that. I don't know. Just pick him up and hold on to him for now. Leave McGravy on the waiver wire is my take there.
Yeah.
Space has this job. Space has not lost this job. Nothing's changed there. So I can't even see McGravy actually touching the stage here for the Valiant. I just don't know what the point of that would be for this roster right now. So that's kind of my take on the Valiant. Blevins, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
So with their season being over, in essence, every single game they play is garbage time or scrims for them. They can play whoever they want. They can play whatever they want. It does not matter. They don't, I mean, I guess they do have the stage playoffs. I mean, I guess maybe the stage playoffs are I think they can go two ways. They can go super hard and really try to make something happen in a stage playoff. Which would make sense because I think the LA Valiant and the Gladiators have to leech. They need to maximize their essentially their remaining home games as much as they can because we're not going to be playing in the Blizzard Arena every single week next season. And I think they need to either get better, improve, get some wins, maybe make a stage playoff berth or something, or they need to do something like Chengdu where they're playing something crazy. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to play. We don't know what they're going to play. Maybe they spike some wins in some crazy situations. They need to maximize they need to develop their players, maximize their fan potential. They need to do a lot of things here, and not all of those things are win the Overwatch League game that week. So I don't know if this hurts the LA Valiant in terms of their fantasy potential because they're not playing for a season playoff anymore. They might be playing for a stage playoff, but if they lose they lose a couple early, all of a sudden there's no incentive to play for the rest of the stage, right? They get nothing. They don't need so I don't know. I think they probably won't, but they could get a little wacky. I don't know what that entails for their fantasy potential.
They could, and I think this is kind of in reference to McGravy's playtime in my comment there. It's certainly a possibility, something you have to worry about. But Space is really young, and he feels like kind of the centerpiece of the roster that they're trying to build around. Especially letting Fate go really tells me that they've chosen in that pairing what they want to be, and they want to become more Western and not be bilingual going forward. Although they're clearly not done with that yet, but it's similar to what Florida did in the opposite direction, basically, and it's taking some time to fully realize that, but it seems to be the direction they're headed. But yeah, the McGravy signing was weird. Do they get him if they have no plans for him and no interest in him? No, probably not. So there's definitely
we've seen that with we've seen other teams do that in stage one or in season one.
Yeah, it could just be bench play. Just a insurance to have somebody there.
What's McGravy's specialty? Is there anything that he plays that Space doesn't? Is there any
McGravy? He's a diva player. He's a flex player. He's an Overwatch flex player. He's a diva bot.
Yeah. Okay. So,
they all are.
That is very interesting because when you have a player like Space, maybe a team finally, and I think maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I believe LA Valiant have talked about having backup players specifically as we've talked about that that bench pressure. Hey, Space, you're our centerpiece right now, but man, let me tell you, your spot is not guaranteed. We've got McGravy. Right. He's chomping at the bit to play. He's, putting in the hours, and, maybe we mix things up. Maybe McGravy has a good, So
Yeah.
I think it's over. It does make a lot of sense when you think about it like that, or at least it could make some sense when you think about it like that. But from a fantasy perspective, I think I agree with you. He stays on the bench for me.
Yeah, and if I own space, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't make a move based off something so flimsy. Like, you just have to wait and see if something bites you here.
You try to not get shadow burned, I guess.
Right.
Would you trade space for fate right now? In a one up, just straight up trade?
No.
Okay.
Not unless I have fate.
Right. But you wouldn't trade away space to get fate.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. It would have to be like a very top end off tank. Somebody like Choi Hyo Bin, who, like, honestly, if something happened that just kind of leveled the playing field a little bit and brought San Fran and Vancouver down a peg, or brought other teams up to their level, however you want to do it, he would actually getting long maps and
right.
some opposition to him would honestly probably be, in my opinion, our number one off tank right now from a fantasy perspective.
Sure.
I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best. I think he's top 3, but it's curious to see how things change with fantasy. It's kind of been the one thing that's been constant, is when you're just totaling stats, and it's fantasy football, everybody plays 60 minutes. That doesn't happen here. Right. So playtime is a huge factor. But moving on, the last team we have to talk about is the Toronto Defiant. They've made some changes here. Asher retired, which is not going to change things up. He hasn't been seeing the stage, but they did sign Sharik and Gods from the Montreal Rebellion. They called them up from their Tier 2 team to play in the big leagues. And word on the grapevine, Blevins, is that they're the new starting tank duo for the Toronto Defiant. There was some scrim footage leaked. Curiously, there's not going to be a section for this. Highly and Illicit were in for Soul on that scrim in the screenshot, so there could be some changes going on in the Soul roster. No news is bad news, I think, with Soul. Like, they're always changing. They're never settling on anything. That's why they'll never be as good as they could be, and womp womp. Yeah. Fleta wasn't in the roster, so who knows what they're doing over there. But yeah,
just actively throwing. I think they're like me in a fantasy draft. They're
and notably, the addition of these two players here for Toronto, though, as much as I'd love the opportunity to bash on your fantasy drafting skills, signing these two players represents a complete change in dynamic. You have, two players that don't speak Korean joined a roster entirely made up of Korean players. So now they are decidedly mixed, and they're going to. Listen, you don't make a decision like that unless you're very comfortable with the idea of playing with them. And somebody in Discord did some research, and then people were talking about it. There's a lot of experience on the Toronto roster of working in a bilingual roster. So I don't think they're necessarily going to struggle with it. I think a lot of them speak pretty good English to begin with, even if it's not fluent in what they want to put in front of a camera for an interview. You don't have to be to communicate in game and things like that. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens here with Toronto. Sharik's not a player that I know a ton about personally, or was really on my radar for a long period of time. I've heard really good things. I'm excited about the prospect of replacing Yakpung, because we've been very critical of Yakpung since stage 1, basically. He had good moments, but mostly bad moments, and times where you were left a little wanting. Right. So I think Sharik represents a significant chance for an upgrade for this team. If Gods is starting alongside of him, though, I'm less certain that that's an upgrade, Blevins. I really don't know. Envy has been, in my opinion, one of the best players on the Toronto roster.
Yep.
I believe he's less flexible than Gods is. And Gods is not far behind him in, in skill, I don't think.
Hey, like, if we need to bust out the Widowmaker on Point War of Hollywood in the Josh OG Invitational. Shout out to anyone who gets that reference.
I don't even get that reference, but
a long time ago.
It was a long time. I do remember the tournament, just not the specific play. But Pepperidge Farm remembers. But yeah, it's really going to be very interesting to see how this team reacts. There's a lot of reason to expect that things could be bumpy straight out of the gate, but I think it's going to really depend on who their opponents are. I think this week it's pretty timely that it's Paris. I think you can go out there and you can bully Paris around a little bit.
Yep.
It's not the easiest opponent. You know, there's definitely ones I'd pick to play against over Paris, but not the list isn't very long. So all things considered, I think we just have to call it a win. Only one game I think is going to be big for them.
Yep.
But overall, I'm curious what your thoughts are. What do you think the impact of these two players is going to have on Toronto?
Couple of things. I'm trying to think of how much I want to reference from conversations I've had. The word on the street is that there may none of this is confirmed. I don't even know if it's confirmed on the back end, but there may be additional signings coming potentially. So this might not be the end of what we're seeing here. The other thing is, and this was, I believe, well, I don't know. I think that there has been some issues internally with the team that aren't necessarily gameplay related, and I think that some of these changes might be a result of that. I do agree with you that Envy has not been a question mark or an exclamation point for us. He's been quite good. But I think at the end of the day, Bishop as the coach here is going to field the roster that is the best roster that he can field. Whether it's skill, it's a combination of skill and working together and whatnot. I mean, we've seen Neko already. He was on Boston Uprising, so not, like you said, a lot of these players have played on mixed language rosters. I think that you're setting yourself up for future success to just as an organization have be mixed language in general, because you can pick up whoever you want. You're not pigeonholed into one thing or another. I also think that there's other factors besides gameplay that are leading to Western players being added to any of these teams. From a marketability standpoint, that's another aspect of it. Overall, I mean, I just want them to win. So I think if Bishop and the coaching staff believes that this is the best roster for them to field, I trust them more than I trust my gut. But my gut says that Envy's a good player, so I want to see him play. But
coward, deferring to the coaching staff when you have a microphone in front of you.
I know. Well, here's the thing: it's a trade-off, right? Because I'm a definite plus on, and I don't want to crap on Yakpung too much, but I'm definitely a plus for shipping Yakpung, and I'm like neutral minus, more towards minus on shipping Envy. Yeah. Or not, or benching Envy. So it's kind of a push for me, but I don't know. I won't even defer. I won't even defer judgment to the coaching staff. I'm going to defer judgment to the week 1 result. That's a true fan right there.
And it's honestly it's even more cowardly in its own way, but it's
certainly more cowardly.
at least more accurate, right? Because at the end of the day, it's what matters, and right. It's certainly possible that Sharik is more of an upgrade and has more of a positive impact than assuming Gods is even less than Envy for this team.
Yeah, it's not necessary.
We can't even sit here and say that. It's just our gut. We've been big Envy supporters for a long time. Yeah. We were really
Kyle Wind and Thorn in to confirm or deny this.
Well, as soon as they get here, then I would just have to troll them and talk about how terrible Gods is, and I don't really want to do that either. So, but they're huge Gods fans, obviously as well, and just tier 2 supporters. So we like to have a little bit of fun with them.
Gods also has he's got the Blackwatch Report bump,
BWR bump.
BWR bump.
It's a thing. It's real. All right, moving on. Let's talk about this week in specifically. I want to, as usual, give you guys the teams that only play once each week or this week, and then the teams that play twice this week. There are no bye weeks. Everybody is active for this week. So if it's a best format or unlimited, then you don't have to worry about somebody not being at all an option for you. But the teams that play twice this week are the Vancouver Titans, the Atlanta Reign, the New York Excelsior, the Los Angeles Gladiators, the Dallas Fuel, Paris Eternal, Seoul Dynasty, Guangzhou Charge, Chengdu Hunters, Los Angeles Valiant, Boston Uprising, and the London Spitfire. The rest of the teams play once. Those are the Shanghai Dragons, Toronto Defiant, Houston Outlaws, San Fran Shock, Hangzhou Spark, Philly Fusion, Florida Mayhem, and Washington Justice. Saying it like that and looking at it, as much as I hate that Houston and Toronto are in the bottom half, and there's a couple of exceptions, it really feels like you're just listing like, oh, the best teams play twice, the worst teams play once. It's hard not to view that when it's like Vancouver, San Fran, New York, like all these things.
I think
San Fran's in the one category.
Here's the thing. The S tier and the F tier are differentiated like that, but there's a lot of murky water in the middle there.
Well, yeah, but it's at least, good in 1, 2, 3 order as far as who plays twice, right? Sure. Because the Atlanta Reign are clearly superior to the New York Excelsior,
and
so they're 2, and New York is number 3.
Show is canceled.
Trolling Blevins aside, though, it should be a pretty good week. There's a lot of really good matchups here, and what we're going to do is talk about some of the ones that really stand out to me as potential 5-map games here. So Blevins, why don't you pick 2 of these, talk to us about any players that you're specifically excited about, and just what these are the matches that we're basically saying people should target for unlimited and things, or if they're on your bench, consider them over other options, things like that.
Yeah, I'll go here with the first one. I'll go Guangzhou Charge versus Chengdu Hunters. These teams are solidly in that like mid-bottom tier, or rather that gigantic glut of teams in the middle that aren't S tier or F tier. And when 2 of them face off, that's great 5-map potential. Man, here's the thing. After this much time off, a lot of our preconceived notions might just be thrown right out the window. I mean, some teams, just this amount of time off is going to change things inherently. But here's the other thing. Some of these teams, the teams are not set to the same schedules in terms of their practice, in terms of how much they're taking, the scrim seriously, in terms of how much they're doing and when they start, scrimming again. It's not like, oh, well, everyone has to be back on this day and start doing this stuff. Some of these teams, I doubt that they have been scrimming and doing practicing the whole time, but like it's really hard to tell who took what more or less seriously. So regardless, I think Guangzhou versus Chengdu is going to be a really good match. And then the other one I've got here is London Spitfire versus the Boston Uprising. And I was just taking a look at some of the point values for Boston players in the last few weeks, and man, they've been racking up some good points here. And actually, London has not been doing super great in the points category, but I do think this is, if I recall correctly, Boston was the very first team to beat London in the regular season in season 1. So even if it's only in my mind, there's a little bit of a rivalry here. It's probably only in my mind.
Pretty sure it's only.
That might not
only
even
in
be
your
true.
Mind. That was an obscure
stat
to try to that was obscure to try to call up and remember. But I appreciate the effort nonetheless. London and Boston's nice because there's no playtime. There's no substituting going on on either side there. So if it's likely to go to 5, it almost doesn't matter who it is because you just line them up and play them. The other 2 potential 5-mappers we have here are the LA Gladiators going against the Dallas Fuel. These are 2 teams that had, it's hard to say resurgent stage 2s because they had strong stage 1s as well. But these are teams that are really among the top of the middle glut that Blevins mentioned earlier, and they really want to push out of it like San Francisco's been able to do and really separate themselves. So Two teams that maybe don't necessarily need the win for like their playoff standings. They're not in a desperate situation there. Obviously, not stage playoffs. I'm referring to it's week one for that. But
yeah, they need it for their stage playoffs.
Right, they do more so probably than their seasons, but yeah, this is just two teams that I think are towards the top end of the standings, top end of the power rankings, tier list, whatever you want to call it, and I just think we're in for a treat, to be perfectly honest with you. I love both of these teams, the way they've been playing. I don't love the Dallas Fuel, just the way they've been playing throughout the stage 2. So yeah, hopefully they're going to hit the ground running, and there's going to be no lag time for them after coming out of the break, because if these two teams had hit at the end of stage 2, I think it would have been fireworks. So hopefully we get that exact same thing happening here in stage 3. The last one is the Hangzhou Spark and the Philly Fusion. Both of these teams have been able to put together, at least as far as win-loss records are concerned, very good stages. The other stage for both of these teams, not that great. So Philly had the not great stage last stage, and Hangzhou was on the up. So I think there is a bit of an edge here for Hangzhou, which is weird for me to say, but Philly is just as inconsistent as ever. Blevins, hit the drop if you got it.
Yep.
Oh,
no, it'll happen eventually.
Eventually it'll cut me off. But so yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see exactly what they're able to do to calm things down and get things in order. We do know Elk's been sent back down full-time to Contenders as they're going to Korea to compete in the Korean Contenders region. And so he's headed down there. Car can't go or something like that. I don't know. I try to keep up with these things in Discord. It's tough. But so yeah, it's going to be really curious. This match, I think, is a little more up in the air. Anything absolutely can happen with Philadelphia. They have the talent to beat anybody, and they've shown the just negative side of their inconsistency makes them vulnerable to absolutely anybody. So bit of a wild card match there, but I think you can do a lot worse than taking some Hangzhou or Fusion players that you wouldn't normally start and slotting them in. The other side of this coin, Blevins, the potential oofs, the ones you just want to stay away from because they're probably going to be brutal. Why don't I take... I don't want you to say anything too rough about Atlanta here. No, I'm gonna take San Francisco versus Atlanta and Vancouver versus Atlanta. I know, Reign fans, you are just on cloud 15 right now, right? You're as high as can be. You're going to come crashing down to earth so hard and so fast this week. You are playing against the teams that have been in back-to-back stage finals now. San Francisco didn't drop maps last stage. Vancouver only drops maps when I don't know, Bumper throws them away. I don't know. They're fine. These are two dominant teams, and even though New York was previously thought to be amongst them until you dealt that mortal back-to-back blow, it's not going to happen again. I can't see it happening. So I'm going to put both of these matchups in the oofs and say stay far away from your Atlanta Reign players. And honestly, this is just business as usual for San Fran and Vancouver players. So if you've been using them anyways, in spite of their dominance and lack of actual minutes on stage, then continue to do so.
I wanted to pick some Atlanta Reign players this week just so that I could get people to pick them and punish them for wanting to play them. But the oof I'm going to pick here, first one is going to be New York Excelsior versus Houston Outlaws. I mean, let the Atlanta Reign win their let them have cake is all I'll say there. Yeah, you're talking about business as usual. That's what's going to happen here with New York. If New York beats Houston, I might just burn all my my NY merch. That's a possibility. I probably won't. I'm going to keep this hat regardless because I like it. But yeah, it's,
you're honor bound to wear that hat until they hoist the trophy at the end of the season, Blevins, every day of your life.
A, this isn't the hat. B,
well, then you haven't worn it today, cheater.
True.
I think that ship actually sailed a long time ago.
I need to be wearing my Toronto Raptors hat right now because they're playing against the Golden State Warriors, and I think they're losing because I keep checking the score. I'm very upset. But yeah, no, I mean, Houston, unless they did something, unless they got some Bugs Bunny, Michael Jordan, miracle secret sauce, this is going to be a dumpster.
Understand that reference?
You'd have never seen Space Jam?
Just trolling you. I'm just trolling you.
Man, you're gonna get some. You're gonna get some.
Anybody that knows anything about my taste in movies, though, bought it for a second,
Yeah,
so it was good.
Yep.
I will say about Space Jam.
Well, you're an old man.
I mean, it was good. It was good. Good. Don't get me wrong, but
Bill Murray,
It's-
man.
it's not-
Bill Murray, Larry Bird.
the best part, those are some of the best characters in the movie.
That's the funny thing because they're completely irrelevant to the story entirely.
Bill Murray was not irrelevant to that story.
You don't remember that movie. The other
You're not
move
wrong.
I've got here is Dallas versus Washington. I mean, Washington is a bad team, and Dallas is not a bad team. What more is there to be said? I mean, Washington fans, I'm sorry.
They be careful though, because they are getting significantly better. They still do have Janice starting at main tank,
Yeah.
and they do still have issues on the roster for sure. But I can't remember the exact opponent they upset, but they just had an upset late in stage 2. So I'm the one that put them in this list, but I'm just trying to save you from yourself a little
Nope.
bit and don't put.
I mean, here's the
Don't put
thing: if they
anything
beat
out
the
there.
Dallas Fuel, I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't care about the Fuel losing, but
I believe there was an episode all about how they're your least favorite team in Overwatch League now. So
my least favorite team jumps around from week to week. It really depends.
clearly it's Washington right now. So
No, I don't. I am apathetic towards Washington. In fact, I like them because they're going to be feeding my team's wins all season long.
Rough.
At least hopefully.
All right. Well, to wrap up the show here, we've got our usual sleepers. We've gone through. We've picked some people that aren't kind of run of the mill every week starters that you'd always play, and we want to highlight a couple of them. So we do them in a contest against each other. We're coming in off of a reset here, so we're just going to kind of alternate who goes first. In the support category, I'm going to take Animo. New York does have 2 matches this week. He's got a nice, safe, easy outing against Houston where he's just going to probably get a decent baseline point total. But then there's the London matchup, and that matchup does actually have potential to go pretty deep. It could see 5. And they're definitely, London is certainly going to, at bare minimum, compete with New York, right? It's not going to be a blowout either direction, no matter who wins. And with map 5 potential, I think Animo's both safe and upside. It's rare that you get that combination of I feel really safe about this player, but also I think he's got a chance to be one of the better Lucio players. And by the way, that's what we're picking here. No Zenyatta's allowed in the sleepers of the week section. Blevins, who do you got?
Yeah, I got Chara from the Guangzhou Charge. I mean, we talked about they've got a pretty good, favorable week here versus Chengdu and Seoul. I mean, Seoul is. Let me go get my my dice out and see who they're going to be starting. Always a winnable match, but also they could just play Fleta and Jaehong and actually have a reasonable roster. And it could go to 5. I mean, Seoul always they upset NY in the stage 1 playoffs. I mean, they have a good team. They have a good team that they can field. It's just, are they going to field it on any given week? So I think Guangzhou really has a good. I mean, again, I think you're relatively safe here. I'm not seeing either of these being a blowout in either direction necessarily, and I think that you have 2 potential 5-mappers here.
Yeah, I think you're a little farther down on Seoul than I am because that bad roster does find a way to win.
Yeah, they do. They sure
vast
do.
Majority of their games, which is what's different from last year this time around.
Sure.
So they have at least that going for them. But going into the tank conversation, Blevins, you're going to take this one first. You've got a big name, but
Yes.
an underwhelming fantasy performer of late for yours.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Gesture here from the London Spitfire. Normally, I mean, we're talking stage 1, or we're talking season 1 here. He's, number 1 in the world. How dare you pick him? But took a look at the last few weeks, and it's been a while since he's gotten more than $150. I think he had like 159 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the last few weeks he's been just scratching over 100.
It was like 140 or something, and yeah, he's been pretty lackluster for a while now.
He's not.
If you own him, you've noticed.
Right. So I mean, man, shop around for that low cost gesture, even if he doesn't pay off this stage. Man, you can't go wrong with an old number one. I don't think. Maybe you can. But man, I don't think anyone's dropping him, and I think you can. I think you might be able to wheel and deal here and pick up a gesture at a discounted price. I mean, this always goes buy low, sell high. This is low. Buy.
Yeah. And 2 matchups this week in particular that have a lot of 5-map potential. Boston has 5-map potential against absolutely anybody, and we already talked about the New York matchup. Yep. For my tank sleeper, man, I put it out there in the world that I don't hate Zephyr as much as Twitter and Reddit do. So I'm going to double down on that and pick him in this game. I think there's a chance you see the best version of Zephyr that you've seen now that he's got this particular tank in Fate by his side. He's going to help make a lot more room for him. I think he's going to be in a position to succeed like maybe he's never been, at least on the Florida Mayhem roster. So listen, all I got to do is beat a main tank player. So I think Zephyr is good enough for that. He can give me enough points to do that, hopefully. Specifically looking at his matchup, though, it is against Soul, so it's going to be a little bit rough. He doesn't have the safety of 2. But I believe a little bit, and maybe it's a fool's errand. Feel free. Listen, I don't have any skin in this game here other than like I don't get to pick first when we pick tanks next week. So, hey, you don't have to join me, but I'm willing to put a little faith in Zephyr here, and won't be picking Florida to win, but I think they're going to be way more competitive within their games going forward. All right, last up.
Different.
What's that?
At the very least, they'll be different.
Yes, there will be different names on the stage when they lose this stage, at a bare minimum. So to round things out here, we're going to pick some DPS players. I'm going to go first this time around. Blevins, you talked me into the Guangzhou Charge week. I'm waving that flag. Give me happy in the DPS camp. Not about skill with this guy that's kept him from being up there. And in fact, he's popped off and been up near the very top of the list a few times. It's consistency. Looking at their schedule this week, it's as favorable as I think you can really ask for fantasy, in the sense that we don't have to want him to win both games. We've got to want him to be competitive in both games. And I think he has an opportunity at that this week. So yeah, I'm going to go with happy. Blevins, who do you got?
I got Blase from the Boston Uprising. Taking a look at their schedule, they're playing London and Paris. London, like we talked about before, 5-app potential. Paris, maybe not, but it's again kind of that Animo argument of you've got consistency here with some potential upside. I mean, maybe Paris pops off this stage and we get a 5-mapper. Boston has that capacity to go up or down against anybody, really. So I'm big on Boston and big on Blase here.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up this week, guys. You are now officially ready to go to set your lineups for the start of Stage 3. If you are a regular fan, you can join us on Discord, discord.me/highnoonpodcast.
Yes, it works again now. I set it up today.
It does. It's officially working again. If you guys are, people that have been in the Discord for a long time, make sure you get your Stage 3 Power Rankings contest submissions in before the games start this week. It gets later, more and more people forget. Sometimes those people are in the running. Not too many people are doing better than me in that particular contest, though. So if you want to try to take me down, make sure you don't forget. Blevins, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter before we get out of here.
Yes, you can find me at _Blevins on Twitter.
All right, you can follow this show on Twitter at HNP_foul play. You can follow the flagship show at High Noon Podcast, or you can follow me at Big Jim. At HNP Deathblow. Man, one of my old ones. First time I went to reference the list, so I didn't get the underscores mixed up, and I just went for like my old fantasy football account instead. Man, follow me there at Big Jim SFL. Might as well, right? All right, so yeah, why not? everybody,
all the
welcome to
secret
stage
info.
3. We're glad to be back. We hope you guys are excited for some more Overwatch League action. For A. Smith, who couldn't be here, for the Blevins, and for myself, guys, thank you so much, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
It's high noon.